Good morning and welcome to my blog, Wisdom for Today. And are you staying warm? It's kind of a cold winter right now. We just had an ice storm pass through Connecticut. And as I was huddled up in my house yesterday, I could hear the wind howl outside the door. Now, I'm from California originally, so I'm used to the sound of blowing of wind. But in California, I think of wind like it blows on the ocean. It kind of comes in like a roar. It never comes in like a howl. I just got used to that when I moved to New Jersey a couple of years ago. And I would sit outside my brick house that I lived in and listen to the wind howl. And I was so grateful for the stronghold, for the fortress of my house to keep me safe, as the wind seemed to blow around trees and flowers as if they were Legos up into the air and tearing them apart. But complaining about bad weather is a little bit like complaining that the earth rotates around the sun on an axis. We know that it happens, it's a fact of life. And instead of complaining about it, we find strongholds, we find fortresses to hide in the midst of a storm. David found such a fortress, and he found it in God. And David had a rough life, which I am grateful for, because he passes his wisdom on in the Psalms about his complaints against God, who will protect them through the storm but doesn't take away the storm. This morning I was reading Psalms 46, 7 through 11. And it starts out with the Lord Almighty is with us. So there's this picture that God is right beside us. And then he says the God of Jacob is our fortress. Now, I want you to notice something that you might slide over if you don't think about the passage carefully. But he names God with a story. That's the story of Jacob, the God of Jacob. And in David's mind, he knew about Jacob. He knew that Jacob had made some mistakes and had separated himself from his family. But he had a God that looked out for him in the midst of those mistakes and in the midst of his bad decisions, a God who blessed them anyway. David knew what he was talking about when he says that. The God of Jacob. You in your life may have someone that you know lived a godly life in spite of some suffering and lived to see God's grace lived out in their lives and find the reward here on earth. And you may say the God of, I think, Pastor Shaw was someone in my life who touched my life, or the God of Bill Bright who founded Campus Crusade for Christ, the God of Jacob. And then he goes on to say, come and see the works of the Lord, the desolations he's brought on the earth. Whoa, Cheryl, are you saying that God brings bad things? I know I struggle with that myself because in the book of James it says that God gives good things. But at night I know that God allows for bad things to happen in this earth. And so I will take this passage at face value, that sometimes God allows bad things in my life. But then it talks about the sovereignty of God. Mind you, this is the God who is with me, who hasn't turned his back on me. This is the God who has been with other people whom I know and hasn't turned their back on them. And then it talks about God's sovereignty over the bad things. He makes wars to cease to the ends of the earth. He breaks the bow and shatters the spear. He burns the shield with fire. That's a God that rises above the wars and the squabbles of this earth. You know, whenever I worry about politics and the world's affairs, I take solace in that I have a God that rises above it. And yes, he will allow for some destruction, but he won't allow it to destroy us. And then this passage ends with a very familiar verse that most of you know. It says, be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted above the earth. And then he ends with the verse that he began with. The Lord Almighty is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress, the person we run to in the midst of life's storms. So whatever you're going through today, or whatever life has to offer you as you go through your day, I hope that you will take refuge in God. If you worry about politics or you worry about the world affairs, I hope you'll take refuge in God, because God is the God who sticks with us. He's the God of a person named Jacob who made a lot of mistakes and blessed him anyway. And he's the God of a person like you who sometimes makes mistakes, and God blesses them anyway. I hope to see you in church this Sunday, and I hope those of you who don't live in this area will find a Bible-believing church to go into. God's blessings, and have a good day.